It is being reported that an adult film star was found dead inside of her apartment, and her agency is calling it a possible home invasion homicide. We discuss the next steps in the investigation and what's come to light so far about Sophia Leone's death with forensic death investigator Joseph Scott Morgan. Welcome to Sidebar, presented by Law&Crime. I'm Jesse Weber. All right, let's talk about this chilling story of 26-year-old Sophia Leone, the former porn star who was featured in dozens of adult films. This is according to the Internet Adult Film Database. But now it is her untimely death that is making headlines. Yeah, her stepfather said in a statement on a GoFundMe page that Leone was found unresponsive in her apartment in Albuquerque, New Mexico on March 1st, was discovered apparently or reportedly by her family. Her agency, 101 Modeling, went on to say on Twitter, X, that Leone was killed in what may have been a robbery-homicide. Now, here's what's interesting about that. Law&Crime reached out to the Albuquerque Police Department for details on this investigation into Leone's death, but at the time of this recording, we didn't hear back from them. However, according to a local media outlet, KOB4, a police department spokesperson told them that Leone's death is being treated as suspicious, but not necessarily a homicide. Now, reporting indicates that Albuquerque police have not released the name of the victim, even though, as I mentioned, social media posts from family and friends, we have the GoFundMe page, they've all identified the victim as Leone, and it is being reported that the preliminary investigation did not show any signs of physical trauma. Apparently, also, the Office of the Medical Investigator is still waiting for the toxicology report to determine a precise cause of death. So something's not adding up. Well, hopefully, to help make sense of this, is my good friend, one of my favorites, forensic death investigator from Jacksonville State University, Alabama, not Florida, and host of the Body Bags podcast, Joseph Scott Morgan. Joseph, so good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Hey, brother. Good to see you, too. Been a while.
It has been a while. I don't know what to make of this. We seem to have a discrepancy between what the family, the agency, the friends are saying versus what police are saying. Can you make sense of this?
Yeah. One of the most intriguing things about this is, and I've read the same data. I've covered the same data that you have relative to the lack of information that's coming forward from the authorities. And then this comment by the agency, and this was my knee-jerk reaction, having worked cases over the years where you have kind of you don't really know what direction the investigative winds are blowing at any particular time, but you're reaching out to people, and who would know her better than her agency? Something happened, I think, probably relative to contact that agency may have had with law enforcement personnel. Now, I don't know if they have taken that and kind of embroidered along the edges with this, or if it's real. But, when you go in, you talk to these people that are kind of in this individual sphere, and you begin to speak to them, one of the big questions you ask is, was anybody out to harm her? And let's just be very honest here and have an honest, open discussion about this, Jesse. The industry in which she works, if you think you got creepers in your life, can you imagine the number of people that she had out there that wanted to contact her? And so based upon that, your pool is so expansive. But who would have access to her in New Mexico? This agency is based out of Los Angeles. You're thinking, well, would somebody travel there to do harm to her, or is this something else? The adult film industry for years and years has had a problem with drug usage. This case is pending toxicology. I don't know what this young woman's background is.
Let's just talk about the toxicology for a second. So as I mentioned, how long till we find out something from those toxicology reports?
Yeah, I would probably think with this particular agency, it is going to take about 6 weeks. That would be, and that's going to be for, and you and I have talked about this before. Anytime we do an autopsy on an individual, we do what's called a standard panel from a tox standpoint, and that's going to cover the basics. basic illicit drugs. And also, I mean, you'll even find salicylates on there, which are aspirin. But, we're going to do stuff like cannabinoids, benzos, uh, THC. We'll look for cocaine metabolite, heroin, any kind of opiates that might be on board. And now, of course, nowadays you look for meth. That's pretty standard. And of course, the 10,000-pound elephant in the room, which is that insidious drug fentanyl, and
Hmm.
it touches so many lives. And so there's a lot of unanswered questions. I think, you know, I would be very curious as to the nature of the scene, where she was found, in her apartment, in her home, signs of forced entry, that sort of stuff, and what are they recovering at the scene that might give them an indication as to the current status of her lifestyle.
And to be clear, going back to that GoFundMe statement, it says the sudden loss of Sophia has left her family and friends devastated and in shock, on top of the difficult process of grieving and seeking justice for Sophia. The family is also facing the financial burden that they were not prepared for. So again, it goes back to this idea, and it was something that you said. Did someone from law enforcement, maybe mistakenly, inadvertently, or on purpose, deliver a piece of
Yeah.
information to the family or the agency about what was happening? Because again, the statement that I read, that law enforcement gave to the local media outlet didn't say this is, there's no signs of foul play, this is completely a natural cause of events. They said it was suspicious. They didn't say necessarily a homicide, meaning she was killed by somebody else, but suspicious. So going back to that, the
Yeah.
idea of how the family and the agency believe one thing and the law enforcement are being tight-lipped about it.
Yeah, and here's another issue with law enforcement. They deal with deaths every day. Okay, medical examiners deal with deaths obviously every day. Families don't. So the slightest miscommunication coming to the family from those that are engaged in this practice every single day, it can be misconstrued in some way. But they do use the term suspicious. Suspicious can mean any number of things. It doesn't necessarily mean homicide.
Mm-hmm.
I've used suspicious, talking about potential for suicide. I've used suspicious when I'm talking about particularly drug overdoses, because you don't, you're kind of bumping around in the dark until you get the toxicology back, where we have some kind of scientific connectivity as to what was going on in her system. I can tell you this: 26-year-olds just don't fall over dead. I mean, it's not something that you're going to have. That's oh yeah, well you can't look at this as if this is an 80-year-old lady that has passed away after a long life. So yeah, there is a significant place for suspicion here if you're an investigator, because the answer lies elsewhere. 26-year-olds just don't fall over dead. And so that's why they're taking such a long, hard look at this. And again, I have to return to this underlying thesis of, the industry she was involved in. It can and has, attracted some unsavory types over the years. And unfortunately, many people get caught up in that lifestyle and everything that comes along with it.
I know covering these stories shows how unpredictable the world can be, and that is a scary thing. And that is scary, especially when you get injured, because no one ever prepares for getting hurt. That comes out of nowhere. But that doesn't mean you can't be ready. And that is why I want to talk about our incredible sponsor here on Sidebar, Morgan & Morgan, the largest injury law firm in this country. They are going to help you protect your legal rights and fight for any compensation that you may be entitled to as a result of your injury. And the reason they are so big is because they win a lot. I'm talking verdicts of $12 million in Florida, $6.8 million in New York, and $26 million in Philadelphia, all higher than the highest insurance offers for these accidents. Morgan & Morgan, they don't settle for lowball insurance offers. And the fee is absolutely free unless you win. But what makes them also really special is that they make it easy for their clients in this whole process. From submitting your claim to talking to your whole legal team, it's all done from your smartphone. That's it. You can see if you have a case in just a few minutes. So to start your claim now with Morgan & Morgan, go to forthepeople.com/LC sidebar or click the link in the description and pinned in the comments. All right, let's get back into it. And,
Yeah.
and the fact that they said that no signs of any physical trauma. Just going back to that, what do you take away from that?
Well, the first thing you're going to do, if you're absent blood at a scene, obviously that's going to be indicative of trauma of some kind. But you're also going to be inspecting for even the slightest kind of trauma, pressure on the neck, that sort of thing. We check the eyes for petechiae. And beyond that, then we're left scratching our head. Some of the things I'd be very interested in: status of clothing. I'd want to know, was she fully clothed? Did it appear that part of her clothing was missing? And here's another element to this, Jesse. I think it's very important to touch on. This agency, they actually stated and used the term robbery. Let's just set death aside for a second.
Yeah.
In most jurisdictions, if you say robbery, that's an interpersonal interaction with somebody. That's an action event. It's not like the home is being burglarized, which can be done when no one is there. Now you have people that surprise burglars, but they don't go in with the intent to use force to take something from someone. Well, what could she have had that someone would want to rob her of? Okay. So when the agency begins to say robbery homicide, that's a different creature. You've got two actions that are involved here. And that the genesis of that is quite compelling too. It's not like someone, for instance, if you have somebody that's like a passion murder where someone just goes in and takes the life. We've covered a lot of these over the years, you and I, where somebody's just so angry they kill the person and they leave. They don't take anything. That's not what's being stated by the agency here. They're implying, at least through this release, this comment that they're making, that something of value was being taken from her. And I don't mean necessarily her life. I'm talking about some kind of physical object that she was being robbed of. Well, what's the genesis of that? Where does that come from? Because that's very specific, Jesse.
Wish we had more answers about this. Even there was reporting about, I can't say if it was her final social media post, but maybe one of her last ones that it's circulating online. It was something that she posted to Instagram. She posted a picture of herself and she had the caption, "Go outside and just appreciate life a little extra."
Yeah.
And a lot of people are looking at that and saying, how tragic is that, that she posted that. Again, I can't confirm how close in time it was to her death. But I think I want to end the conversation with another point from this GoFundMe page. It said, Sophia was a beloved daughter, sister, granddaughter, niece, and friend. She had a deep love for all animals, specifically her 3 pets. She enjoyed traveling and always found ways to make everyone around her smile. So, Joseph, before we wrap up, what are you going to be looking out for next in this case?
Well, obviously, the biggest thing is going to be this tox release. And by the way, shout out to the Office of the Medical Examiner in New Mexico. It is a fine organization, do great work, have for years and years. They're almost a template for the way offices should be run nationwide. They will leave no stone unturned. And so the biggest thing is going to watch them very, very carefully in their releases, their news releases, particularly as it applies to the toxicology. And if they give a statement relative to any kind of other incidental findings they might have, and watch the police very carefully here, the investigators specifically. Who else are they talking to? And if we are to believe social media chatter, it would seem that people can't necessarily be quiet that are being approached by the police. So look for that to pop up as well. The police showed up and talked to me today, or I got a phone call from the police today. That might also give us an indication as to how vested law enforcement is at this point in time.
That gives me confidence. I'm glad you mentioned that. So now I know that we're in good hands with this. Hopefully we'll get some answers sooner rather than later. Joseph Scott Morgan, thank you so much for coming on. Everybody check out his Body Bags podcast. And you're talking also to the star of CrimeCon, by the way. Last time I went there, I was just talking to Joseph that when I went to his CrimeCon panel, I'm sure a lot of you saw that. It had a very big development in the Brian Kohberger case. But Joseph does great work, and I wasn't surprised that the auditorium was filled with 3,000 people. So, Joseph, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, buddy. Good to be with you.
All right, everybody, that is all we have for you right now on this episode of Sidebar. Thank you so much for joining us, as always. Please subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Jesse Weber. I'll speak to you next time.